about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, is the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, peace in all times.
The last President of the United States of America.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic...
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. You're listening to the second hour of Battle of New Orleans Radio. I'm Nathan Lawrence, and I have my great friend, Mr. Gary King, in studio. How you doing, Gary?
Just honored to be here. I really am, and to have the great JFK team. We've got the most formidable JFK team on the planet. So if anybody wants to know about JFK, we've only got one line because we've got mostly guests here. But I'm happy to be here.
And please introduce the guests we got.
All right, we've got the Dr. James Fetzer, the leading JFK at 9/11 researcher in the world. We've got Don Fox, who's all over 9/11. If you go to his website, Don Fox, I think he's at WordPress. He's got a ton of 9/11. And the number one JFK researcher in the world with new information is Larry Rivera. And we're about to blow a hole in the whole JFK tonight because we've just discovered something that no one knows about. So we're going to break it right here on your show.
Well, I mean, this is great, Gary, because, New Orleans has such a history, with JFK. You go back, with Tulane, Dr. Ochsner, and the weaponized cancer, and Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, the whole deal, man. We had Wayne Madsen on here, and he broke, Raphael Cruz's, being here, in New Orleans with Oswald.
And on Dealey Plaza route. The former President Buchanan's father was one block away from Dealey Plaza when the president's brain was blown out.
Wow, that's amazing stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do we have Jim and Don and Larry on?
We have Don and Larry.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Larry. Look, you are the number one JFK researcher in the world, and you've just blown the case wide open. So go ahead and tell us now. I'm going to let everyone know that we're going to have a video of this whole show. So there's going to be a lot of pictures and things like that. So we're going to make a YouTube video tomorrow about that. So we're going to be discussing it as if the audience is seeing the pictures, and we'll try to describe them as much as we can in detail. So go ahead and tell us what the biggest breakthrough that you're in charge of at the moment, Larry.
Well, thank you for having me, Gary. I'm very honored to be on this show with you for New Orleans and the whole metropolitan area there. It's a really, really good time to be in JFK research because now we're starting to realize what Richard Sprague said many years ago about the computer age and technology catching up with all of the photographs and what little was left, actually, because we know that a lot of this was sanitized. But a lot of the photographs that now we can analyze with computer imaging and digital systems the way that we can nowadays. So we've come a long ways in interpreting the photographic record in a new way. And it's like I said, it's a really, really good time because we're starting. Everything is starting to fall into place. And is like you said, there, New Orleans was a very important piece of the puzzle in the whole JFK assassination saga, and so it's only proper that we do this here for the New Orleans audience. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Absolutely. Okay, so the main thing is that you're dealing with shills and all that when they will not admit that Lee Harvey Oswald was standing in the doorway at the time of the assassination, and Billy Lovelady was there too. And that's been all the confusion. You've done some photo analysis and video overlays, and it's over.
Well, I want to add that Jim Garrison actually was one of the very first investigators to go out and on the record say that it was Lee Oswald in the doorway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right behind Harold Weisberg.
Yeah, and they both investigated the case, and Harold went to New Orleans to help him when he was building his case in 1967 in the Clay Shaw trial. And so, this whole concept of Lee Oswald being in the doorway is not something new. Like you said, Harold Weisberg and especially Jim Garrison were the very first investigators and researchers to bring forth that idea, even though a lot of people had already been talking about that since in 1964 when Jones Harris commissioned a thorough study of the Alton 6 photograph. And from there on, practically every investigator, what we call the first generation researchers, were all pretty much in agreement that it was Lee Oswald in the doorway. But now, like I said, technology has caught up with all of this, and we're able to really come with 100% certainty about who are the individuals that are there in the doorway.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we're talking about the Alton 6, everyone's seen this picture. It's famous. You're seeing the president choking on a bullet. You can see Jackie Kennedy's glove holding him in concern, and right behind them is good old Lee standing there watching the parade, and he's not on the 6th floor, and he's not unloading bullets at the president.
Well, at the Oswald Innocence Campaign, the organization that I preside, we have been talking about this and researching this for a long time. I know we've been at this now for 4 years since the organization was established, and we have in our list, some very prominent in our membership, some very prominent people who including first generation researchers like Vincent Salandria, who also came down to New Orleans.
Hey, Jim,
I might add.
Just one second, Jim. You're typing too loud.
and Harold Weisberg and Mark Lane, who are also part of our membership. So anyway, going back to what I was talking about earlier, the new overlays that we have been able to do with the photographic record have really come a long ways in identifying the man in the doorway using forensic methods that are accepted worldwide, and it's just something that if you if you work on it, you'll be able to verify and replicate the work that we have done. So,
yes, many a person has been sent to prison, and many people have been released from prison over this technology.
Yeah, and just a couple of days ago, in fact, yesterday, we had a major breakthrough here on identifying the man known as Billy Lovelady, who is the man that the government and the Warren Commission and the House Committee on Assassinations proclaimed as the man in the doorway by manipulating the certain photographs and information that he had a checkered colored shirt, which is supposedly the shirt seen on Doorman. Now, this concept about the shirt is very, very important because the shirt that Doorman was wearing that day is exactly the same shirt that Lee Oswald was wearing. And based on that is that all of these early researchers had assumed or had proposed that it was Lee Oswald. But now, besides the information on the shirt, we have been able to zoom in on the face and identify and square up features by overlaying the photographs, known photographs of the two individuals, where we have been able to use scientific protocol to establish beyond a reasonable doubt that it really is Lee Oswald in the doorway and not Billy Lovelady. And like I said, just yesterday we had a big breakthrough where we have been able to identify without any doubt that the man next to Doorman who was raising his hands in the doorway, in the entranceway of the TSBD, the Texas School Book Depository, is actually Billy Lovelady, because below his hands, which he is holding up to his forehead, we have been able to obtain information. We have been able to see what his nose and his mouth and his lips looked like, and the space between his upper lip and the nose. And by doing these overlays, we've been able to square it exactly so that we can identify that man is, which we call in our circles a black hole man, because it seems like he has been obfuscated and blacked out there somewhat. But this individual who everybody, all the early investigators for the government had said what they did had them inverted. Billy Lovelady being doorman and Oswald upstairs, supposedly shooting at the president.
Mm-hmm. I got you. All right, Don, you got something to tell us?
Yeah, it's great to be making my maiden voyage here in the Crescent City.
I really appreciate it, Don. This is Nathan Lawrence, and I've watched a bunch of your videos. Big fan. I watched the YouTube video. You had an interview with Bill Fink. I really enjoyed that, so I'm a big fan of your work there.
Oh, hey, thanks, man. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah, I've done a few shows with Bill. We're going to do a few more in the future. Yeah, I was on the email chain yesterday with Larry and Gary, and Jim, and a couple other researchers. And one thing maybe some of the people that aren't as up to speed on the case is maybe some of us that have a inbox full of conspiracy theories. Is that all the way back to Jim Garrison. Jim Garrison said that Oswald was out in the doorway.
Larry always says that there's really no new research. They had it all figured out in the 60s. We've just been having to deal with Shields trying to cover it all up for 50 years.
All right, look, hold up, gentlemen. We're coming to a break. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Battle of New Orleans Radio right here at 990 AM WGSO in the heart of the Crescent City, home of the First Amendment. This is the only radio station in the New Orleans area that will allow you to hear this groundbreaking, hardcore information, because the rest of the radio stations are corporate owned. We are corporate free here, so please support us. We need your support. Battle of New Orleans Radio, WGSO, and please support us Saturday. Come join Goyim and I, 9 o'clock in front of Jackson Square. We're going to hopefully try to get enough people out there to stop the takedown of the Andrew Jackson statue. We have to preserve history. Battle of New Orleans Radio will be right back. Yeah, be there. I can lead them, they respect me because they see I'm true. Follow me until you able to be. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. You're listening to Battle of New Orleans Radio. I'm Nathan Lawrence, along with my co-host tonight, my good friend, Mr. Gary King. Turn it over to you, Gary. Go ahead, brother.
All right, well, we haven't heard from Jim there. Don, you want to go ahead and finish up what were you saying, and we'll let Jim in?
Go ahead and let Jim in.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dr. Fetzer, tell us all about it.
Well, Gary, tonight I feel as though I'm along for the ride. I mean, Larry has done all this sensational work about Oswald in the doorway, about the alteration of the Zapruder film. You and Don have made major contributions. I think it's just splendid to have you featured here, and I'm eager to hear more of what Larry has to say.
Yeah, Larry's just blowing him out the water. So, Larry, talk to us more about your discovery we're breaking right here on WGSO 990 AM.
Well, Gary, I just wanted to mention briefly here that you and I have been working on actually very feverishly on this recording that we have from 1976, when Robert Groden and attorney Kenneth Bruton, who was assistant counsel for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, went to Aurora, Colorado, which is outside of Denver, to see Billy Lovelady and actually interview him for the HSCA regarding him being in the doorway and the supposed checkered colored shirt that he was wearing that day. And you and I have been transcribing this tape, and you know how difficult it's been because of the poor condition of the tape and the recording. But again, now we have the technology to fix this and to render it where we have been able to decipher more than 95% of what is being said in the interview, in the exchange between Kenneth Bruton and Billy Lovelady. I want to add also that this is the only recording that exists, that is out there, which shows us exactly how Billy Lovelady spoke and, what kind of accent he had and everything. So this is groundbreaking what you have really helped out on this, because it's like you said, you're from, your mother's from Mississippi, and you're able to decipher a lot of that drawl, and we've been able to team up on this, and I'm very, very happy because the information that has come out of this tape is going to change the entire history of how JFK, the assassination, is perceived from now on. Because what Billy Lovelady had to say that day just blew me away, and some of the things that he revealed there had never ever been spoken about before. For example, he admits that it could have been Lee Oswald in the doorway, and just that alone right there is something. And I'm glad that we're mentioning it here for Nathan on this radio station, because First Amendment is very, very important. And for us to say that Billy Lovelady said that it was Lee Oswald in the doorway is just groundbreaking. This has never, ever been heard of.
Explain to us the situation and the problem with Lee being in the doorway and why this Billy Lovelady situation is so important.
Well, because obviously, Gary, if Lee Oswald was in the doorway, then the whole house of cards, it was the Warren Commission, and which I call the greatest injustice in the history of mankind, where Lee Oswald was framed for a murder that he did not commit, and so that's why the importance of this. And not only that, the form of government that took over that day, we are still feeling the effects today. And the wars that have been fought, and presidents that were presidents that should have never been presidents, and so on and so forth. So that is why this is so important, that we look at this in the way that we are doing now, 53 years later, because historians maybe 100 years in the future are going to look at this, and they're going to look at our work, and they're going to say, wait a minute, how could this have happened this way? And so we need to obtain justice for Lee Oswald and peace for John F. Kennedy, because the way that he was gunned down, in Dallas, and right in the middle of the day and everything, is just something that should never happen in America. Yet it did. And it had to do with the history that the United States was living, America was living at the time, and all the forces that were against him. That we could fill a whole 2 hours, just on that. But going back to these overlays, like I said, the technology is right, the technology is ready, and we have been able to, for example, there are overlays and photogrammetric side-by-side collages or images that we can make and create, where we can adjust and scale one image onto another and line up all of the features, okay, like nose, mouth. We start by interpupillary distance, the eyes, and from there we continue and we scale. Now, how do we do that? It's everybody has heard of Photoshop, and there's a couple of other programs that can do this. And that's how we do it. And once you obtain the skills and you can work with layers, you can change the opacity of these layers. And I don't want to get too technical on this, but the bottom line is that once you line everything up, you're able to zero in and really appreciate if that is the person in question or not.
Yeah, it's either them or it's not. Once the pupils are lined up, it's either them or it's not.
Look, we're coming to a break. We have Larry Rivera, Don Fox, Jim Fetzer on the line, Gary King in studio. You listen to Battle of New Orleans Radio right here, 990 AM WGSO in New Orleans. Look, we're discussing JFK. This was the situation that really took down, it was the beginning of taking down our nation. They killed our president live on television. He was our last real president. All the presidents since have been puppets. Not even the revered Ronald Reagan was a real president. He was surrounded by 200 CFR members. So we need to remember what happened on that day in 1963. Ladies and gentlemen, you listen to Battle of New Orleans. We'll be right back.
Anybody wondering whether or not not. John Lennon was shot by the CIA in a plot to stifle the peace movement is obviously not paying attention to the situation. Look what we got. Mark David Chapman, red catcher in the rye, like John Hinckley did right before he shot his guy. Something in that book carries weight, a trigger mechanism to switch him into a post-hypnotic state. That author's background's concerning me. J.D. Salinger was involved in the denazification of Germany, aka Operation Paperclip, where the United States smuggled in 1,600 Nazi scientists. Hinckley and Chapman.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. That's my buddy Payday Monsanto, Lone Nuts. Go check that song out, man. Payday Monsanto's fantastic. He definitely talks about all the anti-New World agendas there in his music, so go check him out. Man, this is a great show. This is the new JFK episode 117 with my buddy Gary King, Professor Jim Fetzer, Larry Rivera, and Don Fox. Man, I'm just ecstatic to have y'all all on the show with me tonight. I really appreciate it, man, and especially being here in New Orleans. And look, I know somebody whose father was actually recruited to come over here to work with the weaponized cancer program. This person's father was a doctor from Honduras and was actually recruited to work with Dr. Oshner. So go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. So, gentlemen, does anyone want to give us a couple of comments before we turn it back over to Larry? Don?
Yeah, and maybe it's somewhat of an unrelated note. I just wanted to bring up quick before we, things get going. One of the big aspects of the New Orleans end of the conspiracy Gary and I have touched on is Clay Shaw and his connection to Perm Index. And you can catch our YouTube videos on Gary's YouTube channel there on Perm Index. Those are pretty good. I'm going to have some new info out in a few weeks that dives a little deeper into Clay Shaw, Perm Index, and the Rockefellers.
Wow. So what's the bottom line on Perm Index there, Don?
We're still hashing a few things out. I'm working with somebody who's done a lot of work in this area, and we're going to have some new material coming out in the next few weeks here on all this stuff that's going to open some eyes. I guess we'll put it that way.
Fantastic. Dr. Fetzer, are you there, Jim?
I'm just so pleased to be here with you and Don and Larry having the chance to lay this out, especially because New Orleans played such a significant role in the staging, planning of the assassination, where Jim Garrison proved himself heroic in driving to the heart of the matter, bringing really the only case ever brought in an attempt to bring anyone to justice in the death of JFK. So it's just a real pleasure being here, listening to you guys talk today.
Mm-hmm. All right, Larry.
Well, we've covered a lot of material here. I just wanted to second what Jim said, because Jim Garrison at the time in 1967, the forces that were up against him were just, incredible. NBC did that attack, those attacks actually on him, and to the point where the authorities were forced NBC to give him half an hour to reply to all of those attacks. And if you look at the context of 1967 and what Jim Garrison was against, it's very remarkable. It's incredible, actually, that he was able to get where he went to actually air out a trial, as we see in the movie JFK, which even though it's Hollywood, but it's pretty much what happened. And so that's why New Orleans is so important. And when we went there back in 2014, where we visited all the landmarks, you, me, and Dr. Fetzer, it was a very incredible experience for me, because we went to see actually Jim Garrison's house. We went down to see the Riley Coffee Company, where the trademark used to be, and where Lafayette and Camp Street used to be, and everything. So I enjoyed that, and New Orleans, which is such a beautiful city, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, Jim Garrison was the one that cracked the egg. Up until that time, whatever the media said, we believed it. Hook, line, and sinker. So I was speaking to Liz Garrison. I'm actually friends with her, and sadly enough, most of the Garrison family are not proud of their father. Now Jasper is, but I wanted Liz to know because she paid a heavy price and she looked at it from a wife's point of view. She lost her husband. She lost everything that she had over this Garrison case. So I actually had a chance to talk to her, and I told her that the entire world is a different place because of Jim Garrison. The reason being is that it was 1967 when he started to crack the egg and open up to what was really going on, and it was the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, what would happen if we would have let another 10 years go by before somebody came along and cracked the egg? Well, they would have gotten a lot further along than they are. Not that they haven't gone a long way. But the fact is that we are where we are now, and we know what we know because Jim Garrison broke our hearts and said the government lied to us. And up until that point, we never even thought that could ever be.
Gary, you're telling me the government would actually lie to us? I cannot believe it.
Well, I got news for you, Nathan. Man. We're going to have to sit down and have a heart-to-heart.
Thank you, Dad. I really appreciate that. You know, Lee Harvey Oswald, he's from my hometown in Slidell, Louisiana, you know, right across the lake there. And, you know, people are ashamed, you know, of Lee Harvey Oswald being from you know, my hometown of Slidell. And it just disgusts me because, you know, just like these modern-day patsies, just like the Zarnev brothers from 2013 from the Boston bombings, you know, their knapsack did not match the knapsack that was blown up in 2013 at the Boston bombing. They had no evidence on the Zarnev boy. And we see the same thing with Lee Harvey Oswald, man. They used the same playbook over and over. And just like this past events, let me say this, Gary, I'm going to turn back to you. Just like this past events that just happened in New York, I mean, they used the pressure cooker again, you know, and then, you know, the explosive they used, and I want to say this real quick, the explosive they used was tannerite. Okay, tannerite, you know, is very, you know, gun lovers and Second Amendment lovers love tannerite because you can use that for target practice to blow stuff up, and it's great. And now we see this push to ban tannerite. And I'm just sick of it, man. And this all started with the whole JFK event. You know, they really opened the whole playbook up with this, man. And people really need to understand that they use the same playbook over and over and over. Go ahead, Gary. I just want to get that off my chest.
Yeah. Have any of you guys been following the bombings in New York, which is just a direct result of JFK 52 years later, 53? Anyone?
I haven't had much time to look into it. You know, it sure sounds, you know, I'm sure it's another load of BS, but yeah, I just haven't had time to look at it yet. I've been doing a lot of 9/11 stuff for the last few days.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to go back a little bit, and Nathan was mentioning the patsy, the angle of the patsies, and you're right on the money right there, Nathan, because not only was Lee Oswald a possible patsy, right there in the doorway, they had at least 3 other people that could have been patsies. We call them alternate patsies. And this is something that maybe not too many people in JFK research are aware of. But, for example, Buell Wesley Frazier, who was the 19-year-old kid who brought Lee Oswald in from Irving, and who supposedly saw him bring in that package into the TSBD, who had been staying at his sister's house, Lily Mae Randall. Well, they found an Enfield rifle, a British rifle with 30 ammo at his house. And the very first information that came out, the very first reports and dispatches that came out that day were that they had found a British Enfield rifle on the 6th floor of the depository. And we have done a lot of investigation on Buell. Jim knows because I've spoken on this individual, and I found out about all this information and his Army records, how they drafted him right into the Army as soon as the assassination was over, because he was a key witness. He's the one that said, "Hey, Lee walked in there with a package," okay, and he was only 19 years old at the time, but he could have been one of the patsies. For example, that same night, November the 22nd at 10 o'clock at night, they tried to make him sign a confession that he was involved in the assassination, which tells us that late that night they still had not made up their minds to pin this all on Lee Oswald. Another example, the same Billy Lovelady. Billy Lovelady had been involved in gun running when he was an airman at Andrews Air Force Base. He worked at the supply depot, and he and two other fellows got their hands on some weapons, on some guns, and somebody turned them in when they tried to sell these guns at a bar. So when Billy Lovelady ends up working at the Texas School Book Depository, it raised all kinds of flags because
he's a convicted criminal. He was convicted criminally and civilly. If I said that right.
Arrested him. Yeah, they even arrested him at the Texas School Book Depository. So he could have been. He was a possible patsy, with that kind of background and everything, with that kind of rap that he had. He had been on the lam for more than a year when they finally caught up with him at the TSBD. Not too many people know about this. So Billy Lovelady's there in the entranceway, and another fellow by the name of Joe Molina. They paid him a visit at 1:30 in the morning that night, searching, and not just a couple of cops. We're talking about captains and lieutenants and the assistant district attorney show up at his house at 1:30 in the morning, and they're looking for weapons, anything. Guns, ammo, bomb material, anything that would link him to Lee Oswald. So these people on Friday night are frantic. They're trying to find, who was with the Lee Oswald, who they could pin this on besides Lee, and so they're juggling all these patsies, that same night. And they, unfortunately, they end up with Lee Oswald. But this Bill Wesley Frazier doesn't know how lucky he was that he could have been in Lee Oswald's shoes as easily as anything. If Lee had been caught, perhaps in way too many pictures and photographs outside of that doorway. Okay, so that's why this patsy concept is so important, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, what happens if Lee Oswald's doing cartwheels in the middle of Dealey Plaza during the assassination? I guess we need somebody else to blame it on, right?
That's right. On this type of operation, the assassination of a president, you have to have redundancy. You have to have a backup plan. And these people apparently had a backup to a backup to a backup. Okay, so that's why I wanted to bring this up because I think it's very important.
Absolutely, and it wasn't until midnight that Lee Oswald even heard that he was accused of killing the president, and he heard it from a reporter. He said, no one's mentioned that to me, that I've been accused of killing the president. And then a reporter looks at him and he says, you have been charged. And he looks and he swallows a deep swallow, and they walk him right out of there, and that's the last you heard of Lee Oswald.
Wow. Look, we're coming to a break, man. It's a terrific show. It's the new JFK show, episode 117. With Mr. Gary King in studio, Professor Jim Fetzer, we got Larry Rivera and Mr. Don Fox on the line with us, man. Fantastic information. I have a question for these gentlemen when we come back, dealing with Ed Butler and his propagandizing and gathering up of many of these New Orleans elite, during the time of the whole Kennedy assassination. And he interviewed Lee Harvey Oswald on WDSU Channel 6 right before the whole deal happened. So, ladies and gentlemen, you listen to Battle of New Orleans Radio. Look, please go hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channels, Battle NOLA Radio. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back listening to Battle of New Orleans Radio. I want to quickly turn it over to our guests there so they can continue getting this groundbreaking information out, especially the information Larry Rivera has presented to us tonight. But, I want to ask a quick question. What is the significance of Ed Butler and, some of the things, he was in charge of, the propagandizing and, the gathering of some of these New Orleans elite, like O'Reilly and some of these other people that own some of these New Orleans corporations. So what's your take on that, Larry?
Extremely important. INCA, the Information Council of the Americas, was founded by Dr. Oshner, as you mentioned him earlier in the show. And this was obviously a propaganda machine to make sure that communism did not propagate throughout Latin America and that they would lose the other countries the way that they lost Cuba. Cuba was extremely important in this whole JFK thing here. And so Ed Butler and we did a show recently on the Oswald tapes and these shows that he did on the radio with Carlos Bringuier and Stuckey and Butler and all these people, and that Oshner actually produced an LP recording based on those tapes from those shows where Oswald proved to be coherent, lucid, informed, a 24-year-old who, just impossible for you to be that informed at that age without having been trained in some way in the intelligence industry. So Nathan, this whole situation with Butler, again, we could do a 2-hour show on that. But yes, the United Fruit and all these companies that worked out of New Orleans, importing, all the goods, and employing, all this cheap labor in Central America and South America, and being the hub that New Orleans was, of being such an important point of commerce, and that's where Clay Shaw came in with director of the Trade Mart, and so yes, it's extremely important, and it tells us a lot about the forces that were against JFK, because once you start appeasing Cuba and Fidel Castro, then you were building up a lot of enemies, and that's basically what happened here.
You bring up United Fruit. I mean, that Tulane University was involved with that. I mean, that's right by my house. I mean, Tulane University, that was the university that was, part of the weaponizing of the cancer. I live right by Tulane. You can Google search Tulane CIA, and it'll be mainstream articles how Tulane is a giant recruitment ground for the CIA. And there's a 2012 article from like NBC News or something that, specifically talks about Tulane and the Central Intelligence Agency. So people need to understand, man, the CIA and FBI are very, very, very prevalent here in the city of New Orleans. This is a globalist hotbed.
Yeah, it was.
Not to mention quick, I just wanted to throw in before we run out of time that Clay Shaw was, he admitted to working in the OSS as a liaison officer to the headquarters of Winston Churchill.
Wow.
Right, when Van Braun, the scientist, was arrested in Germany, in other words, they had to pretend that they arrested him. Guess who arrested him? Clay Shaw.
Oh, wow.
So you're way up there when you're actually pretending to arrest the rocket science, and he was way up there. He's one of the most decorated people in America as far as his contribution to war, and I think he's got Don knows some French medals of honor. He's got medals of honor from all over from different countries. I can't really remember them all exactly, but Clay Shaw was front and center.
He received the Croix de Guerre while serving as a colonel in the U.S. Army in the 1940s, and he got the Bronze Star, the Legion of Merit, and Belgium's Order of the Crown.
No slouch, huh?
No. Clay Shaw was CIA before there was even a CIA. He was in the OSS, which was the CIA forerunner.
Precursor, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, look, gentlemen, this has been a fantastic show. I know with the commercials, we don't have a whole lot of time. We got 2 minutes left, and it's just been unbelievable.
I like Jim. If Jim can
chime
in here,
I've never heard Dr. Fetzer so quiet.
All right, well, go ahead, Dr. Fetzer.
When you have the chance to have Larry talk about his recent research, you want to take advantage of it. I have learned so much from his work on the interviews that were done with motorcycle officers that demonstrate that the limousine was not only brought to a halt, but that Officer Hargis dismounted, ran between the two limos to the grassy knoll, that Officer Jackson motored up the grassy knoll. 5 Secret Service agents dismounted and surrounded the presidential limousine. One took a chunk of JFK's skull from a little boy, threw it in the back seat. I mean, this means that the limo stop, which many of us have speculated may have lasted 6 or 8 seconds, had to last 25 or 30. I mean, it's completely stunning stuff. And his work on Oswald in the Doorway, and now this substantiation about the role of Billy Lovelady. I mean, this is really cutting edge.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Dr. Fetzer. Look, we're running out of time. I want to announce real fast. Saturday, join Goyam and myself and Gary King at Cafe Du Monde around Jackson Square. We're going to be there from 9 o'clock till to try to prevent these bastards from trying to take down the Andrew Jackson statue. Look, for the gentlemen that are on the line with us right now, go look up Take Them Down NOLA and look what they're trying to do. This is an organization that is being fronted by George Soros and Black Lives Matter, and they're attempting to destroy our history. So look, this has been a fantastic show. This is the new JFK episode 117. This is the home of the First Amendment. WGSO 990 AM. Please support us. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel, Battle NOLA Radio. We got Gary King in studio tonight. It's been phenomenal. Thank you, gentlemen.
Well, we fired our guns and the British kept coming.